I'm quite sure everything, I am death row. Suge Knight is death row. So I'm quite sure, before it's said and done, all eyes on me and Makaveli out of Fox have definitely come back to me.
Now, Kristen Russo had death row.
The world of hip-hop just felt the ground shift. Suge Knight, once the unbreakable force behind DRR, now confined to a concrete cell, has sent a shockwave ripping through the scene. During a recent episode of his already infamous Collect Call podcast, Suge, speaking with the grit of a man who's spent years fighting the system and making enemies, aimed his fury at Snoop Dogg. Not with some throwaway diss or idle threat, no, Suge came armed with the kind of bombshell that makes even the most hardened insiders stop scrolling and start sweating. He claims Snoop's run is over. The reason? Shakur, the icon thought to have vanished into legend nearly 3 decades ago, is alive. Not just alive, but plotting a grand return. And if Suge's to be believed, Shakur is coming to settle debts, and Snoop sits right at the top of the list.
See, where I'm going with this, Snoop, stop letting these people use you, man.
The kind of claim that forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the story of hip-hop, about Shakur's shooting, about loyalty and betrayal in the glittering trenches of the West Coast scene. What if everything you thought you knew about Shakur's demise was a lie? Suge doesn't flinch as he leans into the microphone, his voice crackling with that old menace. The message is clear. Snoop's days of running death row, of basking in the glow of nostalgia and untouchable OG status are numbered. According to Suge, the clock has started ticking. And the person winding it is a man the world believed was long gone, lying in some Vegas morgue back in 1996. The industry hasn't heard a threat like this since the Bad Boy Death Row feud lit up the tabloids and left a trail of bullet holes from LA to New York.
If you look at it, they committed fraud. They committed bankruptcy fraud. I didn't lose my company by doing anything wrong.
And the timing couldn't be more sinister. Snoop has just taken over DRR, finally acquiring the label that once gave him his name, his legacy, and if Suge's new accusations are to be believed, his deepest secrets. Suge isn't just hinting that Snoop's reign is in danger. He's taunting him, all but daring the Dogfather to prove otherwise. There's a twisted poetry to it. The man who sat next to Shakur the night of that infamous Las Vegas drive-by now sits behind bars, spinning stories that could upend the industry again. If there's one thing we know about Suge Knight, it's that he's never been interested in small talk. When he speaks, the world listens. Or at least, it watches its back.
Stop letting these people use you, man. You didn't want to be pushing death row, you was on death row. That's not neither here nor there.
But let's not kid ourselves. This isn't the first time someone's whispered that Shakur survived. The years since that September night have bred an entire shadow industry of theories, sightings, alleged cover-ups, and blurry photos that have become internet legend. There are those who swear they've seen him ducking into cafes in Havana, those who claim he's sipping rum in the heat of Belize, those who insist he's grown a beard and a belly and blends in perfectly with the locals. We remember the words of Michael Nice, the former bodyguard who once thundered, "Why you think nobody has been arrested if they said they, the one that did it, Nice?" Who claimed to have whisked Shakur away on a jet, swapping bodies and identities and pulling off an escape worthy of a Hollywood script. According to him, it was a carefully orchestrated vanishing act. Hospital staff bribed, double switches performed, Castro himself supposedly giving the nod.
So let's talk about it, man. So you feel like it was bigger than Orlando Shooter Pod. You feel like it's more to the story. You don't think it was that simple?
I feel like it's bigger because
Nice's story caught fire, even as his own life took a mysterious turn. He was found unresponsive in 2018, just days after promising new evidence. In the aftermath, the rumors only multiplied. One investigator released photos of a man who looked uncannily like Pac, older, but unmistakable, standing next to a fan somewhere in Central America. Even locals in Cuba have kept the myth alive, with one Havana resident telling a street YouTuber that the legendary rapper comes by every now and then. If the authorities know anything, they're not talking. The homicide case remains unsolved. The names of suspects changing with the tides of public opinion, the body count of those connected to the story growing almost as fast as the theories. The evidence, if you can call it that, is a chaotic mess of facts and fiction. No one can answer why, out of 14 shots fired that night, only a single fragment hit the driver, Suge himself. Why, on a packed Vegas strip, no one saw the shooter. Why Shakur, normally paranoid enough to wear protection, was suddenly so exposed. Why the autopsy photo seemed so staged. Why the coroner listed Shakur as 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds when he was known to be several inches shorter and many pounds lighter. The man who performed the cremation? He retired that week and disappeared. Then there's Afeni Shakur's cryptic comment. Her son chose to leave quietly. As for that Makaveli moniker, Shakur's own posthumous alter ego, fans rearrange the letters and insist it spells out "Am Alive K." Inside that done album cover, a message reads, "Exit, Shakur." Enter Makaveli. So how do we explain all of this? The short answer is, we can't. And Suge, sitting behind bars, is feeding the fire with every breath.
Ride like this the whole flight, hoping one of them come with me so I can stab at everybody on this mother.
But this time the stakes are different. If Shakur really is coming back, and let's admit, even skeptics are leaning in, he's not coming for a reunion tour or some nostalgic walk down memory lane. He's coming for vengeance. The whispers say he's out to expose the traitors, those who turned on him at his most vulnerable, those who engineered the collapse of the very empire he built. The prime suspect? The man who used to call him brother, the one who sat at the same tables and rode in the same bulletproof cars, Snoop Dogg. This is where things get radioactive. For years, Snoop's name has come up in connection with Shakur's downfall. Always on the periphery, always cloaked in plausible deniability. The accusations have ranged from petty jealousy to full-blown conspiracy. Was Snoop threatened by the energy Shakur brought to death row? Did he cut backroom deals to preserve his own neck when the walls started closing in?
I say a week before he was best of friends. 2 days before he I don't think he liked me.
The friction between Snoop and Shakur was never subtle. Even in their prime, with their names lighting up charts and magazine covers, cracks showed. Insiders claim Snoop was uncomfortable with Shakur's escalating beefs, especially the brutal war with East Coast rivals. He didn't like the infamous diss records, didn't want the smoke, and said so more than once. Former Outlaws member Napoleon, speaking to The Art of Dialogue, called Snoop out for what he called slick behavior, praising Shakur in public, then putting him down with backhanded comments. According to Napoleon, Snoop resented having his spotlight dimmed when Shakur arrived at death row and took center stage. Imagine if you're the biggest star on death row, and Shakur comes and takes all your shine, he said. The jealousy angle isn't new, but coming from someone so close to the story, it hits differently. We can't ignore the timing. Just as Snoop cements his grip on death row's brand, relaunching the name, selling the nostalgia, calling it a meaningful moment, Suge pops up, refusing to give an inch. In interviews and podcast rants, he's accused Snoop of fraud, demanded paperwork, claimed the Dogfather destroyed the label's credibility, and called his new releases flops. Suge's not shy about it. You trying to create something that Suge Knight created, but instead of making something big, you disappointed the world by making everything flop. This isn't just business. It's deeply personal. Suge feels erased, left out of the legend he built, and he's lashing out. If Snoop is worried, he's not showing it, publicly at least. But anyone who's followed the history knows there's more beneath the surface. Snoop has called their beef a meeting of two great minds that realized going at each other would just lead to two lost minds. They squashed it once, at least long enough for some mutual praise and the occasional nightclub handshake. But nothing in this saga stays buried for long.
This is a 5.5-hour flight. Don't nobody say one word to me. Not one word. Just having conversations and doing all kinds of things, saying nothing.
Then, out of the vault comes another bombshell. The rumor that Snoop struck a deal with the FBI in the 90s, back when death row's walls were closing in and federal eyes were everywhere. The whispers claim Snoop was feeling the heat. Maybe from Suge, maybe from the street, maybe from the law. Did he turn informant to protect himself? The implications are staggering. If Snoop really cut a deal, if he helped set the stage for Shakur's disappearance and Suge's fall, then every album, every comeback, every feel-good Super Bowl moment is shadowed by betrayal. Suge's podcast doesn't spell it out, but he gets as close as he legally can. There's going to be a lot of explaining to do, he says, his voice loaded with meaning.
You know, when it comes to rewriting history, it's some try to rewrite history.
And the death row takeover itself is tangled in fresh controversy. Suge flat out says he doesn't buy that Snoop owns the label at all. He calls for the paperwork, challenges the terms, claims that Snoop's acquisition is little more than smoke and mirrors. Show me where y'all paid the money to buy it. Show me what you own. It's the kind of standoff that could only happen in hip-hop. A high-stakes chess game played out on social media, podcasts, and press releases, all while the fans pick apart every rumor, every greeny photo, every cryptic lyric.
As if I was scared. Death Row looked at me as like a traitor. The next day.
The core of Suge's new warning, though, isn't about business. It's about payback. We're not just watching a power struggle for a record label. We're witnessing the possible unraveling of one of music's most enduring mysteries. The theory that Shakur is alive has always hovered at the edge of believability, but with every new statement from Suge, it creeps a little closer to the spotlight. There are too many questions and too few answers. Why did so many insiders, from security guards to industry fixers, insist Shakur escaped? Why have the authorities never charged a single person for the shooting, despite a parade of confessions, accusations, and final admissions? Why, all these years later, does Shakur's name still send grown men into cold sweats? And in the center of the storm, Snoop stands as both survivor and suspect. He's the one who brought Shakur into death row, the one who watched his star dim when the world turned its eyes to Makaveli. Their friendship, once genuine, fractured in those final weeks. Snoop has admitted as much. One week, they were brothers. 2 days before the Las Vegas shooting, Shakur wouldn't even speak to him. Snoop tried to keep the peace, talked about forgiveness, about moving past old grudges, but Shakur wanted war. When Snoop praised Biggie and Puffy on the radio, Shakur took it as the ultimate betrayal. Even when Shakur played Hit 'Em Up for Snoop, Snoop said he didn't like it, called it a come-and-go record, said it was only buying more problems. To some, that was maturity. To others, it was cowardice.
So we made the business decision to be cool with each other, because I don't hate him, and he don't hate me.
Now, with Suge stirring the pot from a prison phone, the spotlight is back where it started, on those last days at death row, on the unspoken deals, the jealousies, the shifting alliances. Could it be that everything, the shooting, the disappearance, the collapse of an empire, was set in motion by deals made in the shadows? Could Snoop, the laid-back icon, have played a role in Shakur's vanishing act? And if Shakur really is plotting a return, is he coming to reclaim his throne? Or is this all just another game of smoke and mirrors, a final act in the greatest unsolved story in hip-hop?
As opposed to being smart enough to understand that our differences were never different. It was just a minor miscommunication, you know.
As the rumors swirl, the stakes get higher. Snoop may be the face of West Coast legacy now, but the ghosts of death row are restless, and the world is watching. Suge's threats aren't just the rants of a bitter man behind bars. They're a call to arms, a signal that the past is not done with the present. Every interview, every podcast episode, every cryptic quote adds another layer to the mystery. Is Shakur really alive, waiting for his moment to come out of the shadows and expose the betrayals that ended an era? And if he is Snoop Dogg truly the man with the most to lose? But as the air thickens with the possibility of Shakur's return, the focus swings with brutal precision back to the one man whose fortunes have risen just as death row records fell, Snoop Dogg. If Suge Knight's warnings felt like mere prison yard bravado at first, they now land with more venom than ever, because they point to a question the industry has tiptoed around for years. Did Snoop's ascent come at the direct expense of everyone around him, or was he just the lucky survivor of a label built on chaos? Suge, never one to mince words, is on record calling Snoop's entire death row acquisition a fraud. Show me where y'all paid the money to buy it, show me what you own. That's not just legal posturing. It's a loaded accusation that maybe Snoop's purchase isn't just about rights and catalogs. Maybe, if you believe the rumors, it's a cleanup job. A way to erase the history, seize the myth, and make sure the old wounds of death row never get reopened.
Up something. You're gonna establish yourself as a businessman. I wasn't taught on death row records. All my cars was in Suge Knight name.
The stakes of these claims go way beyond record sales and press releases. For years, insiders have whispered that Snoop's path to the top wasn't as clean as his public image. In fact, according to some veteran producers and former label insiders, Snoop's sudden move to No Limit Records, just as death row imploded and Shakur vanished, wasn't just about business. Was it strategic timing? A maneuver orchestrated by someone who saw what was coming and wanted no part of the fallout? Suge's accusations now echo through a landscape littered with closed cases, ruined friendships, and, in more recent years, Snoop's own nostalgia-fueled campaign to rebrand death row as a symbol of positivity and West Coast pride. Yet Suge, defiant even from his cell, isn't buying it for a second. For him, death row is more than a brand. It's a battleground of betrayals, and Snoop, his one-time prodigy, stands accused of being the last man standing not because of loyalty, but because he played the game better than anyone. In Suge's version, Snoop didn't just inherit the label. He waited for the right moment, stepped over the bodies, and then claimed the throne. All the while, Suge argues, the key to Shakur's disappearance and the label's collapse was being swept under the rug, hidden by glossy press statements and historic deals.
Because everybody else was scared of that.
Right.
Everybody, that's when Suge Knight was the monster, the boogeyman.
Right.
That's when he was the boogeyman.
The feud between these two men is no longer just a personal squabble. It's become the heartbeat of a much bigger story about power, legacy, and the cost of ambition in hip-hop. Snoop's public comments about Suge have softened over the years, occasionally even drifting into respect. But in private and in the podcast world, the knives are out. Snoop has described his old boss as a control freak, a man who couldn't handle losing his grip over the label's biggest star. Meanwhile, Suge accuses Snoop of tanking death row's credibility, turning once platinum acts into cultural footnotes. When Suge says, "You disappointed the world by making everything flop," he's not just talking numbers. He's calling out what he sees as a calculated dismantling of everything death row once stood for, and as if that weren't enough to keep every conspiracy theorist up at night, another layer sits beneath all the bickering and backstabbing. Shakur himself, the man at the heart of it all, was a student of history, obsessed with Machiavelli's art of war. For those who need a refresher, Niccolo Machiavelli was known for advising rulers to fake their own demise, to throw off their enemies and seize the upper hand. Shakur didn't just read these ideas, he baked them right into his own persona. From his Makaveli alter ego to his cryptic album art and lyrics, Shakur left breadcrumbs everywhere, hinting that he could play the ultimate long game.
That's why you get these type of individuals always kicking dirt on Pac name after they made their millions from doing these documentaries.
Did he choreograph his vanishing act as a grand Illuminati move, one step ahead of the very people plotting against him? Many believe that Shakur's warnings were hiding in plain sight. His own mother, Afeni Shakur, dropped the line that her son chose to leave quietly. Suge Knight himself has kept the theory alive, hinting again and again that the world should look closer at Shakur's music, at the Don album, at all those lines about faking out enemies. Even the notorious phrase "exit Shakur, enter Makaveli" takes on new menace when we look at it now, not as a metaphor, but as an actual strategy. Was Shakur taunting his enemies, warning them in real time that their reckoning would come not with a drive-by but with a resurrection? No matter how wild these theories get, there's no denying their effect. The possibility of Shakur's return is now the sword hanging over Snoop's head, threatening not just his control of death row, but his entire reputation. If Shakur reemerges, every interview, every offhand comment Snoop ever made about his old friend, every jab, every shrug, every backhanded compliment will be dragged out and dissected. And that's before we get to the shadowy claims of Snoop's possible FBI deal. We've heard the whispers that Snoop's survival during death row's darkest years wasn't luck, but savvy maneuvering. The rumor mill says he played both sides, making peace with authorities while keeping up the gangster facade. There are even those who claim that far from being a passive bystander, Suge had a hand in engineering the very events that led to Shakur's disappearance and Suge's downfall.
And as soon as I walked out of there, I went in the bathroom and I threw up. And just laid on the floor for like 30 minutes. His mama came in there and cleaned me up.
The wider implications are almost too big to take in. If Suge is right, and if Shakur is alive, the consequences ripple through every corner of the industry. Old alliances would shatter, forgotten beefs would reignite. Snoop's image as hip-hop's laid-back uncle would be replaced by something far darker. A survivor not because he was the smartest, but because he was the most ruthless. The unresolved case of Shakur's vanishing would no longer be just a cold file in an LA evidence locker. It would become the touchstone for every future battle over control, loyalty, and truth in the music business. So as the rumors gain momentum and Suge's warnings echo through every corner of the hip-hop world, we're left staring at a crossroads. If Shakur is alive, will his return destroy Snoop Dogg, or will it finally reveal the darkest secrets of hip-hop, secrets that some would do anything to keep buried? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you Team Snoop, Team Suge, or do you think Shakur is about to change the game one more time? This is the story that refuses to stay down, and we'll be here watching every twist. Stay sharp, keep digging, and until next time, remember, in the world of hip-hop, nothing is ever as it seems.